In 1985, a group called the Parents Music Resource Center, they tried to get Congress to essentially come up with a labeling and/or censorship program for popular American music. We were having a bit of a moral panic at the time about kids these days and their degenerate music. So this parents group, which was spearheaded by a bipartisan bunch, including Tipper Gore and James Baker's wife, Susan Baker, they formed this group and they went after the music industry. And there were these amazing congressional hearings in the 80s on this issue, where everybody from John Denver, God bless him, to Dee Snider of Twisted Sister turned out at these congressional hearings to talk about whether music really is pornography without the pictures and whether it should be treated as such. Frank Zappa, the great Frank Zappa, testified in Congress against the labeling proposal in 1985. He called it an ill-conceived piece of nonsense which fails to deliver any real benefits to children and infringes on the civil liberties of people who are not children. He was very articulate in making his case. Frank Zappa was actually kind of the hit of those hearings, particularly because of this amazing exchange with a Florida senator named Paula Hawkins. Behold.
Senator Hawkins.
Yeah.
Yes.
You say you have 4 children?
Yes.
Pardon me?
4 children.
4 children. Have you ever purchased toys for those children?
No, my wife does.
Well, I might tell you that if you were to go in a toy store, which is very educational for fathers, by the way, it's not a maternal responsibility to buy toys for children, that you may look on the box, and the box says this is suitable for 5 to 7 years of age, or 8 to 15, or 15 up, to give you some guidance for a toy for a child. Do you object to that?
In a way, I do. Because that means that somebody in an office someplace is making a decision about how smart my child is.
I'd be interested to see what toys your kids ever had.
Why would you be interested?
Just as a point of interest in this.
Well, come on over to the house. I'll show them to you.
Did that. I don't think she ever did that. The greatest thing, though, is that that was kind of the end of it, and then the next witness was John Denver, 1985. Where'd you go? And now, actually, when you watch that specific C-SPAN clip on YouTube, it auto-populates with an ad where you can click to buy Frank Zappa's Porn Wars Deluxe. Somebody will look back on 2014 and be very excited about that, the way I'm excited about 1985 when I look back at Paula Hawkins. Paula Hawkins, the senator sparring there with Frank Zappa, she remains to this day the only woman ever elected to the United States Senate from the great state of Florida. She was elected in 1980. She just served for 1 term. She was a Republican. Sadly, she passed away in 2009. But in terms of her short and historic Senate career, Paula Hawkins is remembered for obviously not really wanting to go over to Frank Zappa's house to see what Dweezil and Moon Unit were playing with. But she's also remembered for the record that she still holds today in the United States Senate. In February 1985, it was Florida Senator Paula Hawkins who was given the honor of reading to the United States Senate George Washington's farewell address. One senator gets tapped to do that every year in the Senate. And when Paula Hawkins got her turn in 1985, she read the address to the Senate faster than anyone else had ever read it in the whole history of reading that speech out loud. When George Washington left office, when he decided to not seek a 3rd term as president, he wrote his farewell address to the nation. This is the original. And he never intended it to be read out loud. He wrote it as a document that would be read by the eye, not spoken by the voice. He had it published in a Philadelphia newspaper called the Daily American Advertiser, and then they published it in other papers after that. It is a great work of American statesmanship. It is beautiful in its own way, but it's really dense. It's really dense. It's written to be read. It is nearly 8,000 words long. If you do read it out loud, it takes at least 45 minutes to read. In 1962, the Senate historian says one West Virginia senator who was reading it to the Senate that year actually took well over an hour to read it out loud. But when Paula Hawkins did it, She broke the record. Paula Hawkins holds the record for the fastest reading of that speech in Senate history. Paula Hawkins read that thing in 39 minutes, and nobody else has ever done a more mathematically efficient reading of George Washington's farewell address to the nation, to Congress.